history teaches us, at least the history that you get in school teaches us, that FDR was a great American president, that he saved us, that people, all people, loved him, that he had the same vision our founders did, and that we just wouldn't have made it without his programs. Well, I don't think much of that is true. FDR was wildly popular, just as Barack Obama is wildly popular today. But the opposition has kind of been sponged from the history books, just like the opposition, the Tea Parties, has been sponged out already by Time magazine. But if FDR was so beloved and nobody was spooked by how much power he took, why was it that his body was barely cold when they passed the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution to make sure that no one could ever serve as long as he did? His policies didn't save us. In fact, it was only in America that the period known as the Depression is known as the Great Depression. Why? Because his policies stripped the free market system and actually prolonged the Depression. I'm going to show you a game in a few minutes that was made in the 1930s that will blow your mind. And FDR also surrounded himself with anti-capitalists and communists. Yes, people who revered the ideas of Marx. I'm just reading in this paper how the 1936 candidate for the Communist Party thought the New Deal is great. The communist movement was huge in America, huge in the administration, and huge with the unions in the 1930s.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The year 1933. The country had a new president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The economy was in the depths of the Great Depression. Overseas German dictator Adolf Hitler rose to power. Anti-communism became a great political debate. Critics accused FDR's New Deal of being pro-union, while others said that it had communist undertones. The American working class had been banding together in the form of unions to prevent oppression by the capitalist system. One union in particular, the CIO, was a hotbed for communism. Meanwhile, Earl Browder emerged as a strong leader for the Communist Party under the idea that, quote, communism is the 20th century Americanism. Because after all, quote, we're all true to the traditions of Paine, Jefferson, Lincoln, as the communists say.
The problem developed at a time of great crisis and turmoil, and nobody was paying much attention to issues like domestic communism.
Beginning in the late 1930s, Democratic Congressman Martin Dies of Texas chaired the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Separately, Attorney General Francis Biddle was busy compiling a list of traitors working for the government. Ex-communist Whittaker Chambers came forward to A.A. Burley, Assistant Secretary of the State. Chambers explained how he was able to secure a government position and outed other prominent spies in the administration.
In which people like Alger Hiss and Harry Dexter White and Lachlan Curry, all of whom were Soviet agents, got into the federal government. And the problem at that time was very substantial.
After Hitler and the Nazis signed a pact in 1939, critics of the U.S. Communist Party say its intentions became clear. The U.S. and Britain were bad. The Soviets and Nazi Germany were good. In 1941, when Germany invaded Russia, the party's message changed. Hiding behind FDR's policy of victory for America, even more communists were able to convince the country of their loyalty.
The Soviets were our allies during World War II. Not only were communists permitted into the government, in some cases they were actively recruited into the government, so a substantial problem became a massive problem.
4 years later, when President Truman moved into the Oval Office, relations with the Russians started to sour. This was the same year spy Elizabeth Bentley broke ties with the Soviets and told her story to the FBI.
And there was a very systematic cover-up going on to prevent the American people from knowing the degree of communist penetration of the government.
3 years later, both Bentley and Chambers testified before a congressional committee about communist infiltration.
In such a serious charge as this, it seems to me we should be getting after the question of my record. What do people with whom I work closely and intimately think of me?
In the court of public opinion, Hiss emerged as the face of communism. He was convicted in 1950 for perjury after he denied giving documents to Chambers. Later that year, it was Republican Senator Joe McCarthy who shined a spotlight on the Communist Party again. He claimed he had yet another list of cases showing betrayal within the U.S. government. McCarthy later led a Senate committee investigation into inefficiencies in the government. Critics accused him of falsely identifying communists and smearing their names. McCarthy was eventually censured by the Senate in 1954. That same year, the U.S. became concerned about the domino theory, that if one country fell to communism, so would others. Kind of feels like that now, doesn't it? To help protect itself from a communist insurgency, America entered into the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, an organization that eventually broke up in 1977. It took another 12 years for the communist regimes to fall in Europe when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989.